from Buenos Aires, Argentina, was formed in 1979 by singer and bassist Ricardo Iorio and guitarist Ricardo Marino, who met at a screening of the Led Zeppelin concert film The Song Remains the Same. The two would eventually get together with drummer Gerardo Ozenberg, and at the suggestion of a friend, they'd name their band V8, after the powerful engine representing speed, attitude, and heavy metal. By playing music inspired by Black Sabbath and Deep Purple, V8 offered a significantly different sound to what most people in the area were accustomed to hearing. This and their rugged looks got them banned in some venues and even led to being arrested in some cases. V8 would consider breaking up in 1982, partially due to Ricardo Moreno's asthma, but instead he'd be replaced by guitarist Osvaldo Savile, and vocalist Alberto Zamarbide would also join. Drummer Alejandro Colantonio would come on briefly and introduce double bass drumming into the band's music, but he'd soon be replaced by Gustavo Rowick, which would complete the classic lineup of V8. This lineup would end up getting the attention of a nightclub DJ named Pedro Leon, who helped the band record a demo. He'd also become their manager for a short time, helping them get more exposure. However, they'd still run into trouble, like at a 1982 concert which they'd been invited to, where they were detained by the police for 2 hours before performing without a sound check to an audience that were largely unfamiliar with heavy metal.
Hola, no nos dejan tocar más, así que vamos a tocar 2 temas más y nos vamos.
Despite this, they'd sign with an indie label called Umbral soon after, and deliver Argentina's first heavy metal album, Luchando por el Metal, or Fighting for Metal, in 1983. Coming in at a tight 27 minutes, Luchando por el Metal is heavy, aggressive, and packed with classic riffs that often push V8 into a speed metal sound, along with the overall traditional metal vibes and some obvious Motorhead overtones. Everything is firing on all cylinders here, from the hard-hitting drums and thick bass to Alberto's passionate vocals and Osvaldo's excellent solos. But along with the fist-pumping melodies, V8 also leaves some room for those Black Sabbath influences, as heard on the beginning of what is possibly my favorite track off the album.
En medio de la noche está esperándote. Aguarda el momento que vayas por él. Mil risas, espejos, mil burlas traerá. Mil caras
After a slow, doomy opening, the track goes into a wicked solo before picking up speed and proceeding to melt your face. While Luchando por el Metal did not sell especially well at the time, it would still allow V8 to book larger venues and would also get them an offer from Spanish metal band Baron Rojo to open for them, which helped add to their popularity and international awareness even more. Then in 1984, V8 would release their second album, Un Paso Más en la Batalla, or One More Step in the Battle.
La noche está ya por caer, la soledad nos deja ver que pronto se cierran las puertas y el miedo envuelve el lugar. Mil naves se acercan deseando destruir y matar.
It's very much in the same direction as the first, but with better production. The music, though, is just as heavy, energetic, and aggressive, but there's perhaps a bit more melody here.
¿Quién llora al verlo cautivo del sistema? En el cual también estamos torturándonos al pensar en el futuro, viendo nuestros días morir sin ser felices, revolcados en lo inmoral y lo corrupto, avecinando el fin de nuestra vil existencia.
And of course, Osvaldo's guitar playing continues to kick ass, adding even more depth to the powerful songwriting. But once again, they still also deliver some slower, more epic-leaning stuff here too. So while Luchando por el Metal may be a more important album, I think V8's first two releases are equally awesome.
Me reiré al ver sus caras, expresando el dolor producido por la blanca fuerza de nuestra unión. Pues estoy cansado del llanto que nunca algo me dio, de la calma y la paciencia ante la represión.
After visiting Rio de Janeiro and attending the first Rock in Rio festival in 1985, the band would consider moving to Brazil in hopes of capitalizing on the growing metal scene. But unfortunately, this move would ultimately come to nothing, and instead the band would split up, with Ricardo and Alberto returning to Buenos Aires. They'd bring on guitarists Miguel Roldan and Walter Giardino, as well as drummer Gustavo Andino. But this lineup wouldn't last long since Walter wanted to write longer songs with more elaborate guitar solos, and Ricardo wanted to stick to the shorter, punchier music V8 was known for. So Walter would leave V8 to join up with Gustavo Rauch and form the band Rata Blanca. which is still active today. After the departure of Walter Giardino, V8 would decide to stick with one guitarist and would instead only bring on 17-year-old drummer Adrian Sensi. However, around this time, Alberto and Miguel Roldan would convert to evangelical Christianity, which immediately caused issues within the band, right as they were preparing to record their third and final studio album, El Fin de los Iniquos, or The End of the Wicked, in 1986. Musically, I think this one is another super solid V8 album, although it's not as hard-hitting and fast as those first two, and some may consider it more of a commercial effort as well. But I honestly enjoyed it quite a bit more than I was expecting to. There are places where this album falls a little flat, but it still rocks overall, and I like the inclusion of some catchier elements too. In fact, I have to say, with some of the songwriting falling a little short at times, Miguel's guitar work is really the highlight on here, elevating every track with some excellent riffs and leads. But the biggest problem with this album at the time was the heavily Christian lyrics, which were criticized upon the album's release, with many fans dubbing the album Christian rock. To a lot of V8 fans, this felt like the exact opposite of the aggressive, rebellious, and outspoken group they knew. And in fact, it was in some ways, as shown in the track No Enloque Seré, or I Won't Go Crazy, a song that was originally written as I'm Gonna Go Crazy, but now with completely opposite lyrics promoting a Christian ideology. Personally, I don't care too much what your lyrics are about as long as the music is good, and El Fin de los Iniquos definitely is. But at the time of its release, the religious direction did not sit well with heavy metal fans, who expected more of an anti-establishment message from their music. But the real breaking point for Ricardo was when he found out that the rest of the band was trying to book V8 at the temple of Argentinian televangelist Pastor Jimenez, who was already known as a fraud back then, long before trying to sell blessed hand lotion to his followers as a cure for COVID. And so, V8's final show would be in October of 1987 at a small club called Taiwan in Buenos Aires. would break up in 1987, but the members would splinter off into their own new groups, just like Gustavo had with Rata Blanca. Osvaldo Civile had already started Horcus in 1986, and after the split, Alberto Zemarbide, Miguel Roldan, and Adrian Sensi would form Logos in 1990, while Ricardo would form the most influential of these bands, Hermetica, immediately after the breakup in 1987. However, interestingly, Alberto Zemarbide and Miguel Roldan would join up with Gustavo Rowick and Osvaldo Civile in 1996 as V8 for a couple of concerts, which resulted in the live album Homenaje, or Tribute. And aside from compilations and box sets, that would be the final release from V8. Sadly, in October of 2023, Ricardo Iorio would pass away from a heart attack, leaving behind a massive legacy in Argentinian heavy metal. For your homework, I can wholeheartedly recommend all three of V8's albums: Luchando por el Metal from 1983, Un Paso Más en la Batalla from 1984, and El Fin de los Iniquos from 1986. Obviously, there is very little footage of this band out there, but they're a huge influence on Latin American heavy metal, so I hope you enjoyed checking them out. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Muchas gracias.